Just by way of introduction for Herman, he's become extremely well known now through his political efforts, but what has probably been forgotten is that he is actually an entrepreneur. He started a business called Black Like Me at a time when being black and being in business were almost insurmountable obstacles. Watching him go into politics was a big surprise. I remember talking to him at the time and thinking and seeing the posters around Johannesburg, which said Mashaba for mayor, and it was like a joke. I mean, really, DA winning Johannesburg. Well, we know the result of that. Through coalition politics and the ANC getting under 50%, Herman was mayor, and he did a spectacular job. For those of us who live in Johannesburg, suddenly the potholes were being filled, suddenly all of those little things that you notice when you're a resident of a city were being attended to. Herman is now very much in politics. He's using a lot of his family fortune to, well, I don't know if it's a lot of it, but he's using his family fortune to support his political party. There are many of us who hope that he is going to be introducing the Macron moment in South Africa. If you recall what happened in France when the President Macron, before he was elected, it was unthought of that someone who would come into politics from the outside would get more than 50% of the vote and put school teachers and traffic cops and people who were just leading members of their societies into parliament. But they've done pretty well in France, and perhaps there's a Macron moment coming in South Africa. But that's about as much as an introduction as anybody needs, Herman. Thank you for being with us and for sharing your wisdom. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Alec. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to all for making the time to be with us this morning. I'm actually going to start by saying something that I know we all believe in, but very of us often talk about any longer. Hope South Africans is still alive in our country. It is not dead. Hope may have been so beaten, battered, and bruised. Hope may lie injured in hospital beds, but like the South African spirit, it refuses to give up. But hope is not lost. I'm going to tell you something that every South African believes. Deep to the recesses of their subconscious, we can get South Africa working. But like any turnaround strategy, we have to start by identifying the problem. Much has been said about this COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it has had on our country and our people. The loss of lives and livelihoods that have been touched, that have touched everyone, directly or indirectly, has been tragic. The management of lockdown regulations took a country that had been in and out of recession since 2012 and killed 25% of small businesses and over 2 million jobs. We have been beaten in the vaccine race by countries like Venezuela and Zimbabwe. And as a result, the world economy will be operating at full capacity while we South Africans will be waiting in vaccine queues. Promises of emergency procurement and stimulus packages were seen as nothing but the ringing of the dinner bell by the hyenas in our political system who looted with impunity, laughing every time the president spoke of dealing with corruption. I do not tell you this because you do not already know all these things. Our political system is filled with people who have made careers out of saving up endless analysis of the status quo without offering solution to the future of our country. The reason why I describe this state of affairs to you today is because the mismanagement of COVID-19 pandemic generated two undeniable truths that we must accept to begin the turnaround of our country. Firstly, the deadline for South Africa to adopt a new path of reform has been moved forward. In my view, there's a ticking time clock on our economy and our country. If we do not begin reform by 2024, we will be consumed by a national debt trap, declining tax base, and a deepening levels of poverty. Secondly, and this is very important, the reforms that are needed to get South Africa working, for South Africa to succeed, and for our people to prosper. Let me tell you something, the ANC must be out of government. And that is just that simple. COVID-19 did not reveal anything that has been visible in plain sight for many years. It merely demonstrated the truth, to us in particular clarity of vision when the stakes were highest. We entered this pandemic with a healthcare system that was already producing horror stories of childbirth in the corridors and death in the waiting rooms. We entered lockdown with an economy downgraded to junk status, in recession, and with 40% unemployment. While our government was focusing on alcohol, cigarettes, and open-toed shows, other governments were getting in line ahead of us to procure the vaccine. When we were in lockdown, being asked to sacrifice our businesses and jobs, our government could not even honor this sacrifice by increasing doctors, nurses, beds, oxygen tanks, and ventilators. While our people were suffering, the ANC was looting and getting rich. COVID-19 just demonstrated what we already knew. Our country cannot succeed as long as the ANC is in power. For South Africa to achieve the vision of a prosperous, non-racial, and secure future for all South Africans, the ANC must become part of the history of this country. Because the truth is that we are less equal now than we were in 1994. We are less employed, less educated, and less safe than we were prior to 1994. What a shame. For South Africa to achieve the vision of a prosperous, non-racial, and secure future for all South Africans, the ANC must become part of the history of this country. So, now we have identified the problem. I took the mad decision, as Alec mentioned, to leave the relative comfort of business and to enter these harsh realities of politics. I left the established infrastructure of my former political party to start ActionSA when I discovered they were not serious about removing the ANC. That is why I've started a political party today called ActionSA. I did these things because political parties in South Africa seem quite comfortable to be in opposition in perpetuity. Nobody in the South African political landscape appears willing or challenge the ANC and remove them from office. I formed ActionSA, and I will remain committed to this project for every minute of every day until the ANC is in the opposition benches of our country. You may think this is not possible, that is an impossible task, but I want to say to you today that it is possible and highly possible. In 2019, 17 million people voted, 10 million people voted for the ANC, and 7 million for other political parties. What you might not know is that 18.5 million South Africans of voting age did not vote. Think about this for 1 minute. Why in a country with our problems would 18.5 million people not bother to go out and vote? I put it to you that there's nobody who has animated the South Africans with a sense of belief and hope that their vote can matter. There's a party that can remove the ANC, that their lives can be better. So now we have the solution. So let us fast forward to 2024 and imagine that a tide of change has swept our country, removing the ANC and putting in place a new government committed to reform. What does this reform look like? For the sake of this discussion, let's focus on just 3 reforms to demonstrate how possible this is. It starts with our economy. When our economy is growing, jobs are created. Fewer people need social grants. More revenue is collected to drive infrastructure and social investments, and tax breaks can be given to reinforce the cycles of growth. It needs unambiguous economic policy that leaves zero questions about the direction in which we are heading and ends the veto rights given to trade unions in our country. It requires the reversal of our sovereign debt crisis to improve our investment grades and bring down the cost of debt servicing, which is currently more than what we are spending on education in our country. It involves the overhaul of our education system, a new curriculum, investment in school infrastructure and technology, the best teacher training colleges, and performance management of education, whether SACTU likes it or not. It means bringing together the greatest minds in our country and implementing the changes that will stabilize our electricity grid and unshackle ourselves from the anchors of South African Airways and Denel. It necessitates the easing of labor legislation and fines that comes with it, because with our levels of unemployment, we cannot continue to appease unions at the expense of the unemployed South Africans. It means unleashing the power of the private sector, graduating young people to become entrepreneurs and providing real support to small businesses. It must see the low-hanging fruit of opportunities being seized by government in partnership with the private sector, of which I would like to share with you just two simple yet powerful ideas. We have a national housing crisis in our country, where people living in backyard shacks or RDP houses far removed from work opportunities. Yet, we have these inner city buildings with relatively modern infrastructure that have been turned into slums. I want to see across our cities what I started when I was a mayor in Johannesburg, handing these buildings to the private sector to build low-cost, affordable accommodation, shopfronts, and student accommodation. With the right inducement and incentives that will be profitable to developers, we will kickstart our construction sector and will address one of the greatest social ills better, faster, and more than any other our government could ever achieve. The second opportunity lies in the abandoned and derelict state-owned industrial parks, each with enormous factory floor space lying unused. When I grew up, ladies and gentlemen, even under the darkest days of apartheid, the people who did not work were those who did not want to work. Industrial facilities like Babelegi, Harankua, Mokwase, Twatwa, Seshego, and many others meant creating jobs in communities now with almost 80% unemployment rate. In a country where our industrial productivity has fallen through the floor, can you imagine giving these facilities to manufacturers free of charge as far as I'm concerned, but on the basis of the brick and mortar investment in these facilities and the jobs they will create? Everything I've said is possible. We have the minds in our country. We have the ability in our country. We just need the leadership in our country. We have to establish the rule of law. No country has ever prospered without an established rule of law. Simply put, if someone commits a crime, that person, irrespective of who they are, they must go to jail. Put differently, South Africa and the people need to stop being seen as soft target for criminals. We must achieve a day where law-abiding citizens live in peace and criminals live in fear. This means a new modern police force supported and capacitated by politicians, not interfered with by politicians. We must increase police presence. We must invest in CCTV technology that exponentially compounds the reach of the police, and we must build a resourced and modern detective force. Our courts must function day and night, over weekends, and ensure that justice is swift and the victims actually see it working. We did this during the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Why can't we do it now? Our borders need to be managed. We must determine who may and who may not enter our country. And we have to provide the protection of documentation to those who seek asylum in our country. And without any question, we must have the return of the scorpions with unfettered powers to investigate and prosecute corrupt politicians. We have to fix our politics. There's something very, very wrong with our political system. Trust me when I tell you this. I've been in the system. You will not employ politicians in the most basic positions in your businesses today. CODESA created a great deal for the politicians, but it screwed us as citizens. And I want you to believe me. Our politicians account to their political parties, not to us as South African people. You vote for the political party, and they decide who's going to represent you. You and I don't even have a member of parliament to hold to account for how they vote. This, ladies and gentlemen, has to change. But electoral reform is asking parliament to allow voters to hold them to account, which is tantamount to asking the techies to set the dinner table. That is why ActionSA will begin this change itself and will begin it with immediate effect. We will not choose our candidates for the South African people in smoke-filled rooms where deals are done as part of the political pastime of political careerism. We are committed to run primaries, a system where voters of a given ward will register with us. Candidates who come forward will campaign to the voters, and at a given point in time, the voters of the ward will choose who will be their candidate. The very same system will be used to performance manage those who were elected. A regular assessment of the councillor's approval rating will be taken, and if it drops below a certain level, they will be removed and replaced through the same system of primaries. This system, for the first time, generates the situation where elected representatives are accountable to the voters of the ward first and to the party second. Imagine that in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing wrong with South Africa that cannot be fixed by what is good about South Africa. What is wrong is our politics and our government. There's no dispute in this. But we can fix what is wrong with South Africa through the power of what is good about our country, the people of this country. My journey into politics has opened my eyes. I've met with millions of South Africans in our bustling cities and our dusty villages, white and black, old and young, rich and poor. So believe me when I tell you this, that the South African people are good people. We are not the extremists. We are not the racist. We are not those who sought divisions. We are law-abiding. We are hardworking. We are resilient. We are family-oriented. We love our country. We hate what has been done to it. All that is needed for embers of hope to ignite and produce a blaze of opportunity, prosperity, and unity is for the leadership that brings us together. It is my humble hope that ActionSA, working with great South Africans like yourselves, can bring South Africans together to act as one for the country we know to be possible. I thank you.